Perhaps you've been hearing a lot about dyslexia recently, and you've noticed some characteristics in your child that just make you wonder, does my child have dyslexia? Or maybe your child has been evaluated and they've been screened or even diagnosed with dyslexia, and you're still wondering, well, what exactly is dyslexia? I want to take a few moments to share with you what dyslexia is. First of all, dyslexia has nothing to do with your child's intelligence. Researchers have proven that intelligence and dyslexia are separate. Your child could be a genius and have dyslexia. Your child could be low average in ability and have dyslexia. Your child may be very advanced and capable and have dyslexia. Dyslexia occurs along a continuum of different intellectual abilities. Dyslexia is a neurobiologically based language processing disorder. Whoa, that's a mouthful. What does that mean? Well, first of all, it's a language processing disorder, which means it impacts how the brain processes language. It specifically impacts how the brain processes the lower level aspects of language, such as processing sounds, symbols, or retrieving words. So what about the neurobiologically based section of that phrase? What that means is that the brain with dyslexia has less efficient neural connections or neural connectivity in sections on the left side of the brain primarily, specifically the parietal temporal section and the occipital temporal section. There may be too few neurons in those sections, too little dendritic growth growing off of the neurons, or poor alignment synaptically between the ends of neurons, or just disruption from interfering neurons. Think of it this way. If a child or an individual has dyslexia, the connections in certain regions of the brain that really do the heavy lifting for reading and spelling, well, they don't have very good neurological highway systems in place. So your child will need intensive structured literacy to help the brain repair those regions or build better connections. You see, dyslexia is not about poor intelligence. It's really about poor neural connections in the regions of the brain most responsible for the heavy lift of reading and spelling. But dyslexia doesn't just impact learning to read and spell for many individuals. For many individuals, it will even impact how well they remember what someone says, or how long it takes them to memorize terms for a test, or how well they remember words and can retrieve them at the point of need. And this is why dyslexia is not just a reading disability, it's a language processing disorder rooted in poor neurobiological connections. So, as you identify this as a weakness for a child, we then know what we can do about it. We can provide intensive intervention to help the brain build better connections. I mentioned earlier that dyslexia causes difficulty with processing the mechanics of language. I would like to take a moment to clarify what I mean by that. Individuals with dyslexia will have difficulty quite often with 1, 2, or 3 language processing areas. The first is phonological processing. Research shows that most people with dyslexia have some degree of disruption on a neurobiological level with processing the sounds of our language. What is phonological processing? It's the brain's ability to work with individual sounds, to distinguish sounds, manipulate sounds, blend sounds, segment sounds, rearrange sounds, remember sounds. I like to think of phonological processing as the brain's ability to do acrobatics with sounds. If your child's brain has difficulty with one or more aspects of phonological processing, it often can lead to difficulty learning to read and spell and process other aspects of language. That's the first area that can lead to dyslexia. A second aspect of language processing is called orthographic processing, and this is the brain's ability to recognize, remember, and manipulate the patterns of our written language, the letters, numbers, symbols, spaces. Orthographic processing relates to the brain's ability to process the symbols of our language. When the brain learns to read, it activates the parietal temporal section and works to bond letters and sounds together in something called paired associate learning. Well, if your child struggles with phonological processing, which is processing of sounds, or orthographic processing, which is processing of symbols, this will slow and belabor their brain's ability to learn and master the code, specifically the phonological code of our language. Some people have trouble with just phonological processing. Some individuals have trouble with just orthographic processing. However, it's very common for individuals with dyslexia to actually have trouble with both phonological processing and orthographic processing. Phonological processing is processing sounds. Orthographic processing is processing the written code, the symbols. Well, there's a third area that can lead to the presence of dyslexia, and that's difficulty with rapid naming. So we have phonological processing, orthographic processing, and now the third one is rapid naming. Rapid naming relates to the brain's ability to retrieve or pull words from the brain. A common test we administer to students who we suspect may have dyslexia is rapid symbolic naming, wherein the student will say a string of letters in isolation, just one letter here, one letter here, one letter here, and they have to name them as quickly as they can. For example, M-R-I-J-O. They have to name the letters they see very quickly. This test is designed to measure one aspect of rapid symbolic naming. There are other rapid symbolic naming tests that measure their ability to name numbers or shapes or colors. But all of these tests are designed to put demands on the brain's ability to retrieve the name of something or a particular word. Some individuals with dyslexia actually struggle to retrieve words. This is going to impact how fluently they are able to read. Of course, with good intervention and time, most students become much more fluent with their reading. But rapid symbolic naming specifically impairs the student's ability to retrieve words at the point of need, and this has a negative impact on their ability to read fluently. The three areas that we've reviewed that cause dyslexia are phonological processing, or processing of sounds, orthographic processing, or processing of the written code, and rapid naming, or word retrieval, which relates to the pull mechanism of retrieving words. Your child, if they have dyslexia, may struggle with one, two, or all three of those areas. For example, they may struggle a little with phonological processing, a lot with orthographic processing, and not at all with rapid naming. Or they may struggle a lot with phonological processing, not at all with orthographic processing, and a medium amount with rapid naming. How much they struggle with each of these areas will present their particular profile of dyslexia. A few other items I want to mention as you're thinking about your child's profile are working memory and processing speed. Working memory difficulties do not cause dyslexia, nor do difficulties with processing speed. However, if your child has difficulty with auditory working memory, which is their ability to hear something, remember it, and manipulate that information, they will have often more trouble learning and responding to intervention. It will simply take them more time to progress through the different levels. Lastly, if they have trouble with processing speed, that can make anything and everything in the classroom or during intervention more difficult because their brain simply needs more time to process, particularly process the written code or process language. Your child may be very fast on the football field and yet very slow to process the written code. So, in review, dyslexia is caused by difficulty with phonological processing and or orthographic processing and or rapid naming. Your child's severity of dyslexia, if they have dyslexia, is related to the degree of disruption with the neurological connectivity. More severe cases of dyslexia are associated with significantly disrupted neural connectivity. Milder cases of dyslexia have faulty neural connectivity, but it's not as weak or poorly wired as it is in cases of severe dyslexia. In either case, the antidote to dyslexia is high quality, intensive, structured literacy delivered in a diagnostic prescriptive mode according to the needs of your child. You see, with appropriate intervention and with good accommodations and with a loving family and with caring teachers, your child absolutely can overcome learning and literacy challenges related to dyslexia and be successful with learning and with life.